Hello, you're very welcome to today's video, which is the final element of inner richness. Today we're going to explore acceptance and why it's that foundation or keystone for all the elements of inner richness. So before I jump into that, my name's Anand. I'm an emotional wellness coach and I support those who are weighed down with inner struggles so that they can uncover their inner richness. And that's why I wanted to be able to tease out all the elements of inner richness. So if you've just come to this video, there's a whole playlist of 7 of these elements of inner richness. So we began with courage, then we looked at authenticity, creativity, playfulness, trust, connection, and today we're going to look at acceptance. And I hope that you can see, if you've been watching this series, how each of them interconnect and support one another or feed into each other. And the reason why I feel that acceptance is that deep foundation of inner richness is because when we accept ourselves and accept a situation as it is, the struggle stops in anything. So before I do a deep dive into what is acceptance, how would it look like, what blocks it, also what acceptance is not, and then what can you do to become more accepting of yourself, of situations, and of others. Before I do that, I want to share a quote from Osho. I love what Osho shares. It deeply resonates with me. So you'll keep on hearing his words coming through some of my work. It really informs what I do. So he talks a lot about acceptance. In actual fact, he talks about it being the key, really the very kind of cornerstone or foundation of meditation, of awareness. I'm extending it out to how we live our lives. So what Osho says about acceptance is, the principle of total acceptance is simply this: accept yourself and flow with nature. Wherever it leads you, that's your destiny. Don't come in between. Don't try to pull yourself to be something else. That is the struggle. Now, for me, when I read that quote, I feel like he has encapsulated what I'm going to talk about in very few short words. I'm going to do the long-winded way. Well, hopefully not too long-winded. So, just breaking it down, total acceptance. Accepting yourself and flow with nature. So when I was reflecting on what is acceptance for me, I always like to go to the dictionary and see what it says. And what I found very interesting was, one definition is acceptance is to be in agreement with something or someone, to be accepted into a community, to receive something like a bribe. That was a really interesting definition. And what each of them focused on was acceptance from another, whether it's in a legal agreement, a bribe, being accepted in a community, being in agreement with another. And I found that very interesting because for me, working through inner struggles, working with clients with inner struggles, their biggest pain point is not accepting themselves. That's where the root of the misery comes from. It may have come from various external sources, but how it's felt is what I mean is that is a very deep pain point. A person is unable to accept themselves, and when they can't accept themselves, they can't receive others. They can't accept another person coming into them. They may pretend They may force themselves to do things against their will to be acceptable, but underneath it all, there's a deep inner rejection. So rejection is the opposite of acceptance. Whether we reject ourselves, we reject others, or we reject a situation, it's a refusal or it's a fight. And that's what Osho talks about as that is the struggle. When you accept yourself and flow with nature, and what he means is with what is, what the situation is, there's a flow, a serenity, an ease. When you struggle with it, when you reject it, when you fight it, that's where the pain comes in. And for somebody who has a PhD almost in not accepting themselves, I really know what this is. I really know what it feels like to not accept myself, to send a signal out there to others to say, don't accept me, don't be in my sphere. And I hid it for a very long time, but now I know. And as I grow to accept myself, an inner friendliness and inner warmth and inner care arises. So the more my self-acceptance grows, the more my inner richness grows. And that's what I would love for you to have too, if this is something you're struggling with. If you can't accept yourself, or maybe you can't accept a situation. Maybe you're in a relationship where you don't feel accepted by the other person, but you stay there in the hope that you can change them. There the struggle is you're not accepting the reality of the situation. You're in a relationship where you're not cared for or loved. You're in a relationship where you're being rejected. That person is mirroring your inner rejection of yourself. Or perhaps you're in a work situation and you're rejecting what's going on in the workplace. You want it to be a certain way. You want a colleague to act in a certain way. You want a project or something to go in a certain way. Or you want to get a promotion or a pay rise. It's not happening. You're not getting the value or the recognition you believe you deserve. Now, maybe you don't deserve it, or maybe you do, but you're still not getting it. So maybe you force yourself to stay in the job a bit longer in the hope that eventually they'll recognize you, or you decide to leave to go where you're maybe valued somewhere else. But when we don't accept ourselves, that plays out in all areas of our life, whether it's in our relationships, in our work, how we treat ourselves, how we are in our friendships or lack of friendships. It's almost like how our finances, absolutely. There are many of us, myself included, who struggle to receive money because I don't accept it, or I didn't accept it. Do you know? So it can play out if you start to really look at where in my life do I not accept things? Where in my life do I not flow with nature? And that's where you'll see where your pain point is, and that's where you'll see your inner struggle. So not accepting yourself, others and situations, fighting with them will keep you trapped. Surrendering into what is actually happening, understanding it, then creates a change. You don't do the change. The change happens when you accept and surrender to it. I don't know about you, but if you've ever had this experience of perhaps you want to meet someone romantically. I was always wanting to meet someone romantically, and You know, it's like, oh, I can't meet someone, or what's happening and what's getting in the way. And people would say, well, you know, when you stop looking, that's when it will happen. And I used to get really, really irritated with this. It's like, oh God, that's easy for you. You're married or you're with someone and all of that. But they were right. They are absolutely right. The minute you drop the struggle, the minute you drop the fight, two things will happen. Either you become very happy in the situation you're in as it is, and it doesn't matter a fig whether you meet someone or not. Actually in that contentment, perhaps then the second thing can happen where you meet someone. But then it's not a need. It's not that I have to meet a person to fill this loneliness inside of me. It's I want to meet a person because I feel a lot of sharing in my heart and I want to share it with another. There's a very different quality to both of those. And this is the beauty of acceptance. It's a surrendering. I've shared before in these videos where I came to accept I am an alcoholic. And I spent about 35 years denying I was an alcoholic. And in those 35 years, there was a lot of things happened and a lot of wasted opportunities. But I don't believe it's helpful to keep looking back and going, oh, damn, I lost 35 years. No, it's just that's what it is. But I at least woke up and saw I need help. I can't quit alcohol on my own. I surrendered and accepted I'm an alcoholic. And with that came a lot of pain at the beginning. But it was a beautiful surrendering, because then I went, I need help. And I went out and I got the help. And it came in abundance to me. I received a lot of help and support. And I'm coming close to 3 years sober now. And I love it. And this is where all the growth has happened for me. It was happening before in its own way before I became sober. But it accelerated when I became sober. But I could not have done that if I didn't surrender and accept to the situation as is. If I did not flow with the reality, I am an alcoholic, I cannot do this on my own, I need help. It's the only way. With whatever it is you're dealing with, maybe it's a small struggle and a small fight and you can handle it on your own. But if you're dealing with something major, coaching may be one way, but you may need, if it's an addiction, you will need addiction counselling or some sort of support there. Or if it's dealing with a severe mental health issue, again, getting the therapy. Or if you're struggling to not accept yourself and it's hurting you emotionally or financially, or it's affecting you in work, well, that's where coaching with me can be really, really valuable for you. So how can you, what can block it first? What can block acceptance is denial, staying stuck with what is, saying, I don't need help, I'm fine. And that's fine, you're not the kind of client for me, and I'm sure you've probably switched off by now. But if you continue to deny or minimize or tell yourself stories that everything's great, maybe the relationship's great, maybe I don't really drink that much, or I don't really gamble that much, it's just the odd flutter, or I only play 1 hour on video games. You can continue to tell yourself that story, but if it's biting into other parts of your life and if it's affecting your life, there's a difficulty there and you're not accepting it. Or perhaps you don't accept your emotions, you're denying emotions. That has a big impact on you. So to be able to move through that block is to accept the reality of a situation, accepting that you have this difficulty, surrendering into it. For me, acceptance is a form of surrender. And there you could say, well, how do I understand this thing that I'm not accepting? How do I meet it? So that's a question to put to you. How can you meet the thing that you don't want to accept, that you deny or reject? So a good question to consider is, you have this difficulty, but you don't want to accept it. So do you want to remain with the difficulty? Do you want to stay there? Or do you want to understand it better and accept it? Those are your choices. This is where you flow with nature, flow with the situation. What is also beautiful about acceptance is it will take you on a journey that almost becomes mysterious. So your head and your mind might be saying, well, I've got this plan and this trajectory and this is what's going to happen and I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to bulldoze my way through the thing. But then life over here is happening and you're not even seeing it. And that's probably where you're meant to flow. Often we force ourselves into situations to please others or to fulfill an expectation from others. But that may not be your reality. That's maybe not where you're meant to flow with. Maybe you're meant to be over here. So the interesting thing about acceptance is what is acceptable for you and what makes you feel, yeah, this is where I'm meant to be. That may not be in accord with what others expect from you. And that brings a different struggle. That's where you need courage, authenticity, trust, connection with yourself, connection with the other to say, I hear what you're saying, but this is where I need to go. This is where all the other elements come into play. But the keystone is the acceptance. So I will stop there for now, and I do intend on elaborating more on these 7 elements of inner richness because I really feel they are the answers to many of our inner struggles, particularly with acceptance. So thank you for joining me in this series, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.